on a Monday morning. We are learning this morning as a schos for Shlema, for Harav Shlema Yosef, Harav Shlema Yosef, no, Harav Yosef Shlema ben Risha, Harav Shalom Dov ben Chava, Harav Yaakov Tuvia ben Chava Gittel, and we're thanking Hashem that Hindi's mother is doing well, and she should continue to feel well. We're also so excited to share in the simchas of our classmates. Goldie Baumgarten's daughter Leah and her husband Aaron Meir Kazanovich had a daughter whose name is Rosa. Mazel Tov, Upsharanish of Zisi Raskin's Enikel Meir Levertov in Austin, Texas, son of her Menucha and her son-in-law Levi. Mazel Tov. And Goldie Plotkin's grandson, Meir Zarchi's bar mitzvah. Mazel Tov, this should only be continued simchas with freiliche Herze, with happy hearts and good health and all good things.
I think there's also a birthday, Elisheva.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't know if we should start with birthdays because then that will start a whole new thing. But Mazel Tov on the birthday, Arichas Yamim v'Shanim Tovos.
And the smartphone.
Also, I don't know the names, but there was a terrible tragedy in Yerushalayim, and there was a fire in Or Chaya in the dormitory, and because of certain circumstances, it was very hard for the people who live in the dorms to leave, and there are a number of people who have been hurt very, very badly, and I don't have the names, but the Eibishter should give them each a refuah shalema ukreva. And our learning should be another schus for that. We're learning the Sicha on Chanukah today. It's a shorter Sicha. It takes us a little bit out of our comfort zone into understanding the back end of how halacha is thrashed out, and the Rebbe gives us insight into the importance of understanding different opinions and how it relates to the mitzvah and how it can relate to our own life. I will say right now that this did not come easy to me. So I'm only saying that in order that people should not hold back. And if people want that it should be repeated again, or even a third time or an eighth time, we will do that. Because, it's like I said, not so much in our comfort zone necessarily. Aleph, Tanu Rabbanan, the Gemara teaches, Mitzvahs Chanukah, Ner Ish Ubeisei, that the default way to fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah candles is to light one candle per household. V'hamahadrin, and if you want to be more careful, ner l'chol echad ve'echad. You light a candle for each person in the household, or each person in the house. Sorry, no, that wasn't correct. Each person in the household that is going to light menorah lights for themselves. In other words, instead of everyone being yetze in one person lighting it, each person or each male, different ways of understanding this, minhagim, but light on their own. V'hamahadrin min hamahadrin, and those that want to be very, very careful, Beishamai Oimrim, then there's two opinions, and this I'm guessing that most of us are familiar with, that there's a difference in opinion as to how to do this mitzvah in the way that is mahadrim min mahadrim, very, very careful. Beishamai Oimrim, Beishamai taught Yaim Rishon
I'm sorry, Rivky. Is mahadrin, is that careful, is it, or to beautify it more?
Thank you. It is to beautify it more. That's
it's another word. I don't know what the word is.
That's I think the more literal way and maybe conceptual way of understanding it. But halachically, I think when we say mahadrin, it's more careful, more punctilious. But thank you for
But
pointing that
this
out.
situation with this, I'm talking about specifically in this situation. I don't know if careful is the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to use that word since I don't know which word you have in mind. I'll just use the word mahadran.
perfect.
Okay. So the mahadran min ha-mahadran way to do it, according to Beis Shammai, it is that on the first day you light 8 lights. Mikan ve'elech poiches v'hailech. So you go less each night after that. O Beis Hillel Aimrim, and Beis Hillel opined, Yom Rishon Madlik Achas. On the first night, you light 1 light. Mikan ve'elech moisif v'hailech. And then every night after that, you subsequently add another. Okay, so one is saying that you're talking about how many days you have left. And one is saying that you're focusing on how many days have already passed of the Yom Tov. Okay. Now, then in the Gemara, Pligi ba tre amurai. Then we have a debate between 2 Amoraim. So the next generation of sages. The first generation is Tanoim. The next generation is Amoraim. And we have a debate about not how you light, but why, what is the driving logic behind Beis Hillel? What is the driving logic between for Beis Shammai? So Chad Amar, so one of the Amoraim opined, Taima de Beis Shammai keneged Yamim Hanichnasim, the Taima de Beis Hillel keneged Yamim Hayotzin. What is the driving logic behind Beis Shammai opining? Beis Hillel opining that it's how many days are still. Chad Amar Tamai de Beis Shammai Kneged Yamim Harichnasim. What is the driving logic behind the opinion that we're talking about how many days are still to come? The Taima de Beis Hillel Kneged Yamim Hayetzim, and the one Beis Hillel who opines that it's about how many days have passed. So the Chad Amar, one of the Amoraim said, Tamai de Beis Shammai. Okay, I'm sorry. I got myself confused. I got you all confused. Let me start again. Okay, the 2 Amoraim say that Beis Shammai is looking at how many days are still to come, and Beis Hillel is looking at how many days have already passed of the holiday. Okay, but the other Amora says, V'chad Amar Tama de Beis Shammai keneged pare hachag, that the reason why Beis Shammai opines that first you light 8, then you light 7, then you light 6, this aligns with how the karbanos were brought in the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot. So in general, in the Mishnah and the Gemara, when it says hechag, the holiday is always Sukkot. And on Sukkot, there were not just karbanos brought by Bnei Yisrael for Bnei Yisrael, but there were karbanos brought for all the nations of the world, and they were brought in a certain order. And on the first day, there was the largest amount, and then subsequent days, it went lower and lower incrementally. So that's why Beis Shammai says you should light 8 first. The Tama de Beis Hillel de Malim b'kodesh ve'ein maridin. And the reason why Beis Hillel says that you should light 1 the first day, then you should light second 2 lights, etc., like we do now, is because in matters of holiness, you should always go up and you shouldn't decrease. You should always increase. Okay? So we have the difference in opinion. And this is all in Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin, in the most punctilious way to do it. You have 2 ways of doing it. Either you light 8 and then you go incrementally down each night. This will be in accordance with Beis Shammai. Or you light 1 on the first night and you go incrementally up. This will be in accordance with Beis Hillel. Then you have the Amoraim who give us reasons for why Beis Shammai said what he did and why Beis Hillel said what they did. So Beis Shammai is going according to a paradigm that we have that is connected to Sukkot. On Sukkot, you would offer the largest amount of the bulls on the first day, and you go incrementally less and less as the days of Sukkot go on. And why does Hillel opine that you do more? Because he says that in matters of holiness, you should always go up, you should always increase, you should not go down, you should not decrease. Now the Rebbe says, Upashtus haloshen pligi, and when the Gemara uses this term, that they debated, that they argued, that pligi ba tre amurai, that two amuraim argued or debated this, noite yoser, this implies שהמחלקת בין שני האמוראים אלו אינה רק בטעמי בית שמאי בית הלל, אלא יש בה גם נפקא מינה להלכה. This implies that this is not just, abstruse, that this is not just like they're arguing over the rationale, they're arguing theology, they're arguing philosophy, but that there are actually practical implications in this argument. V'amnam kein mivor bekama sfarim u'paiskim shamachlekes bein harambam l'taisfais tluya b'shtei deis hamarayim hanal. And in fact, the Rebbe says that there are a number of svarim that bring down that the machlekes, that there is a difference of opinion between the Rambam and the Taisfais. And after the hyphens, you see the next line, the Rebbe says, and that actually the argument or the machlekes between the Rambam and the Taisfais is connected to the above debate between the Amoraim as to what is the logic that impels the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Now, what is the argument between the Rambam and the Taisfais? Im kedas ha-Taisfais geder mahadrin min ha-mahadrin hu haisafa rak al inyan ner ish ubeisai k'leimer sha-mahadrin min mahadrin madlikin b'leil beis de Chanukah shnei neres avor kol b'nei habayis. Okay, so there's an argument. Is it according to the daya of the Taisfais? What does the Taisfais say? That the whole rubric, the whole category of mahadrin, mina mahadrin, is something that you add only on the default, on the base mitzvah, which is that you light one candle for each household. So the mahadrin, mina mahadrin, as applied in accordance with the Taisfais opinion, would be that you light on the second day of Chanukah 2 candles for the household. Oi kedas harambam, or is it like what the Rambam teaches? Shegeder zeh, that this category of mahadrin min ha-mahadrin, hu haisafa gam al v'mahadrin ner l'chol echad ve'echad, that it is also applicable to that second category, which is the mahadrin. And what's the mahadrin? That you light one for each member of the household. Hainu, meaning, shamahadrin min mahadrin madlikin af heim ner l'chol echad ve'echad. That would mean that in this second understanding, which is according to the Rambam, that yes, every person who's lighting their own menorah in the same household, moisifim v'halchim peichsim v'halchim b'mispar haneres avor kol echad mibnei habayis. It would mean that on each menorah that is lit in the household, you would either, in accordance with Beis Hillel, you would be adding one as each day of Chanukah arrives, or in accordance with Beis Shammai, you would be doing one less every night of Chanukah, okay? And the Rebbe says that this is related to the above mentioned debate as to what is the driving logic in Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. L'deya harishayna, in accordance with the first opinion, shetaima de Beis Shammai k'neged yamim hanechnasim, v'taima de Beis Hillel k'neged yamim hayetzim. if you go according to the first Amayr that says that the reason Beis Shammai opines that you light 8, and then you light 7 on the next night, and you light 6 on the next night, and 5 on the next night, and so on and so forth, that it has to do with how many days are still left in the holiday. And Beis Hillel is talking about how many days have passed in the holiday. So then, if it's according to that opinion, ein lahadlik ner l'chol echad ve'echad mibnei habayis b'fnei atzmai, ela rak ner ishu beisai. Then, in accordance with this, logic would dictate that you wouldn't add another light for every person in the household. You would just do it on one menorah. Kidei sheyiyu. I'm sorry. Now I muddled this. I muddied this for you by using the word menorah, because it's soon going to become clear that not necessarily was it always like today. And even today, you don't necessarily have to have a menorah. What you have to have is the lights. Okay, so cancel the menorah word. Sorry. And why? Why would you only do one ner ish ubeis, right? One for the whole household. Kidei sheyeh heker sheribuy haneres mechuvan keneged hayamim. Because if you, let's say on the second day, have 6 candles lit, then it's not recognizable what day of Yom Tov of Chanukah it is. It's not recognizable according to Hillel. It's not recognizable according to Shammai, because you have all these lights lit, and the person walking into the house or looking from outside or walking past the menorah in the street, past where you lit it up in the street, is not going to know what day of it is. Whether it's Nichnas or Yetzim, it's not going to be recognizable, whichever opinion you're going by, Hillel or Shammai.
Sorry, can I just to understand, just to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that if you maybe have 6 children and everyone in this household is lighting, so now you have 8 people in this household and there might be 8 separate candles on night number 1, let's just say. No one's going to know, is it something to do with 8 or is it something to do with each individual? So according to the first opinion, only the one person in this household would light more for number 6 than they would light for number 1. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If that is what we're focusing, which is the first Amira that is saying that the difference in Hillel and Shammai's opinion has to do with focusing on how many days of Yom Tov have either passed or how many days of Hanukkah are still to come.
So you would have one person who let the father, let's say, of the house would light 6 for the 6th night, but everyone else would just light 1, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, correct. But according to the second opinion, I'm going to apologize. I'm not reading the chat yet. I'm going to read the messages in the chat at the end of the Sif, just so I don't get confused.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
and I still have an issue back there. So if the father of the household lights 6 and everybody else lights 1, you still have the same discrepancy, which leads me to understand that the argument is only the one person in the household would light, and only if one person lights do you have the understanding of which day it is. Because the moment more than one person lights, you no longer know which day it is.
You got it.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. And that is the opinion of the Tosafos, that the whole idea of Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, of changing, is only on the one menorah. Okay. Ve'ilu lamanda amar sheni, hasheni shetama de beis Shammai k'neged pari chag, v'tama de beis Hillel de malam b'kodesh ve'emaridin. But according to the second opinion as to what is driving the difference between Beis Shammai and Hillel, which that Amora opines that Beis Shammai is going in accordance, in alignment with how the bullocks were offered in the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot, and they were offered in descending order incrementally, okay? And Beis Hillel is going according to the axiomatic idea that in spiritual matters, we should always be adding and we should never be decreasing. Ein tzarich beheker keneged mispar yamim. So if that is the driving logic, then we don't need to be concerned. We don't need to be focused, laser focused on how many days of Hanukkah have already passed. That's not what we're focused on broadcasting, on making the heker, on making it recognizable. Olatam zeh, ma'isifin hamahadrim min hamahadrim gam ala mahadrim ner l'chol echad ve'echad. And in this paradigm, everybody that lights in the household would be adding or detracting. Okay, now we're going to strictly, we're going to keep with adding just so we don't get confused, because that's how we do the mitzvah today. We go according to Beis Hillel. Okay, so according to the second opinion as to what is the difference between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, it has nothing to do with the days of the holiday. It has to do with other factors. And so therefore, it would be according to the understanding of the Rambam that anybody in the household that's lighting a menorah should increase incrementally every day. Aval yesh makam loymar, but there is place to say shahanafkamina ben shnei hatainim, that the difference, between the two reasons, Hiloi rak beikar din mahadrim min mahadrim who compares to Tosfos compares to Rambam, that it's not just in the interpretation of the debate of the Rambam and the Tosfos if it applies to just the one menorah in the household or it applies to each one. Elagam lefi minagenu kipsak harama. But there are also practical implications in how we keep the mitzvah today as delineated in the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah writes, V'chein haminag pashut, that this is the simple minhag today, shekol echad mibnei habayis madlik neres Chanukah, that everyone in the household lights the neres of Chanukah, u'maisif v'hailech, and then every night goes higher continuously. That even in the way we do it, yesh nafkamina lahalacha lamaisa b'shnei hataimim, that there are also differences in halacha that are based on the different opinions that the Amoraim give as to what drove the logic of Hillel and what drove the logic of Shammai. Now, I'm going to stop now for a minute and look into the Yehuda says, perhaps the reason the Sfardim only light per family or if more, not in the same room. Perhaps, yeah, that could be. That could be. Wait, let's go back because they're very connected to the Rambam. So let's go back. So that's interesting, Yehuda, because the Rambam actually says that it's everybody, not just one. But
Okay,
I don't know. I don't know enough
when
about.
the
I'm not
Rebbe-
going to pretend that I know anything.
I know, but when the Rebbe came out years ago and said that every child should light, was a problem with the Sfardim. They said it's not according to what they are used to, and if already not in the same room.
Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they say the same thing about Ner Shabbos.
This I didn't hear.
Yeah, so I'm not,
Chanukah, yes. This I'm sure. If already the children don't, I mean, if the more children, boys, they don't light in the same room.
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Hani is asking that we should repeat the
Why
last.
just the boys?
I'm sorry.
I said, why just the boys? You heard this?
There was a year where the Rebbe, so you remember? The Rebbe said that girls should light.
Yeah, but usually it's then the small girls
Yeah.
after Bas Mitzvah not. This is already
Yeah, a whole different
another
thing.
discussion.
Actually, there's actually a beautiful reason. We could talk about it later. Why the women don't like. No,
Okay,
it's a
Rachel,
very
we'll
nice
talk
reason.
about it later in the Farbrengen. So the last paragraph, the second to last paragraph was part of explaining in more kind of abstruse form, what is the difference between the two? Okay, but in the final paragraph, the Rebbe says, but it's not just about, mental gymnastics. Like, it's interesting to see how the debate between the Amoraim expresses itself in how we do the mitzvah. He says, but there's also place to say that the nafkamina bein shnei hataimim, that the reason between that the difference between the two reasons that the Amoraim set forth, he loy rak beikar din mahadrim min mahadrim who compares Shatais versus compares Rambam. It's not just in analyzing if this applies to issue base, say that you're only lighting one for the whole household, or if if every person is lighting, to which the mahadrim min mahadrim applies. Elagam lefi minagenu. But the Rebbe is also going to show us two scenarios in which, in accordance to the way we light menorah today, kipsa karama, v'chein haminag hapashut, shekol echad mibnei habayis madlik neres, Chanukah, u'moisef ha'hilech. In the way that we do it today, everyone in the household or every male in the household lights their own menorah and incrementally goes up one each night. But still, the Rebbe says we're going to see how the difference in opinion between the two Amoraim has direct bearing. Yesh nafkamina lahalacha lemaisa ben shnei hataimim. That is going to have a direct bearing on halacha lemaisa. And it's going to come from those two opinions that the Amoraim set forth, whether it has to do with how many days are left or how many days have gone, or whether it has to do with Pareh Hechag and Meisifin, that we go always up and not down in spiritual matters. Beis. So here the Rebbe is going to give us the first scenario where these two opinions of the Amoraim that are trying to understand the two opinions of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, right? How it impacts halacha l'maaseh. Mi shehidlik belel beis ner echad bilvad. Me'ez siba shatiyah. Okay, you have a person on the second night of Chanukah. They lit one candle alone for whatever reason. Yesh lachkar. So now we have to explore kama neres olav lahadlik belel gimon. How many lights should this person light on the third night? On the second night, they only lit one. Laman da'amar harishain. So according to the first Amira, Shetaima de Beis Hillel keneged hayamim hayatzin, that Beis Hillel opines that we light in accordance to how many days have passed. Pshita shetzarech lahadlik shloisha neres keneged hayamim hayatzin. So it's simple. Okay, so for whatever reason, you lit one on the second night of Chanukah, but on the third night of Chanukah, how many candles you light has to reflect how many days have passed. Avalamanda Amar Hasheni, but in accordance with the second opinion, a second Amira, Shetaima de Beis Hillel Mishum de Malin Bakodesh ve'emaridin. But if you're going to go according to the second Amira, that Hillel's opinion is fueled by the fact that you always have to do more spiritually and not less. It's enough for this person who lit only one candle on the second night to light two candles on the third night. Because if he lights only two on the third night, he's still going to be conforming with the most important, operative here, which is that you always have to add and not decrease.
I have a question. Somebody mentioned something about not lighting more than one menorah in each room. Is that what we do? Because
no. Yehudis was saying that's by Sfardim.
In other words, that each person goes in a different room.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the fact that it shouldn't be a bracha levatala if more than one person's lighting together. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the That-
Like with Shabbos licht also, you're
Exactly.
supposed to have the child light before the mother, if possible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Vehine nafkamina zu hirak b'di'avet. The makom shebetchila loy kiyuma hamitzvah behider. It would seem that this difference would be only ex post facto, in a pinch, not lichatchila. Once something happened that wasn't 100%. Ulam yesh limtzay nafkamina gam kasher beleilis koidmim niskayma mitzvahs ner Chanukah ba'ofen shel mahadrin min hamahadrin. But the Rebbe says, but we can also find a scenario in which it was done carefully, and there's still going to be a difference, la halacha, based on the different opinions of the two Amorai. And what would that be? Mi sheyesh lo shemen ukiyetza bezeh hamaspik rak avor shnei neres belel gimel de Chanukah. What if a person only has enough oil or enough candles or enough wicks or whatever it is, enough physical materials with which to light 2 lights on the 3rd night of Chanukah? Kama neres olav lahadlik. How many candles should this person light, or how many lights should they light? Laman de Amar Harishan, according to the first opinion, Nimtza l'chayre, would seem shekevan shebalav hachi eno yachal l'kayim es hamitzvah keneged yamim hayetzin, because he's anyway not going to be able to fulfill this idea of lighting enough lights that would reflect how many days have already passed. So he should light 1 candle. And then he's going to fulfill the default, the baseline of how to fulfill this mitzvah. If he's going to add another candle, because he only has enough for 2, because he doesn't have enough to properly mark the days, he should stick with the default. The default mitzvah, the base mitzvah is to light 1. And that has to do with the first reason, the first Amar that says that adding more or decreasing has to do with how many days of Chanukah is. That we're talking about how many days have passed or how many days are still to come. Masha Enkin, but a contradistinction, Lamanda Amar Sheni, the second Amira, Shatama de Beis Hillel de Mailim Bakodesh Maridin, but the second Amira says, no, they weren't focused on the amount of days, what day of Chanukah is. It has to do with more global reasons. It has to do with other reasons. Beis Shammai is aligning it with Sukkot. And there's a lot written about the alignment between Sukkot and Chanukah. And Beis Hillel is saying that in matters of holiness, you always increase. You never go down. So if you're going to go according to the second opinion, olav lahadlik shnei neres, then you would light 2. Because although you're not going to be able to do the mitzvah in the completely punctilious way because you don't have enough fuel for 3, you only have enough for 2. So but it's still malin b'kodesh, but you're still going to be doing more. No, I'm sorry, you're not going to be doing more than the next day. But hare al kol panim hu mekayim ve'em meridin. But at least you're not doing less than you did the night before.
I have a question.
Yeah, let me just finish the paragraph.
Okay.
Because at least you're not doing less than you did the night before. The night before you lit 2. So the next night you should at least light 2, which would not be less than the night before, even though it's not more than the night before. So you're keeping one part of the axiom that you should always do more. You're not keeping that part, but you're keeping the part that you shouldn't go down. You shouldn't do less. Yes, Um,
About Sukkot. Taka, we know that we go because for Umas Ha'olam. But if the whole idea is to bring chayas to them, okay, then, and it's an inyan of Kedusha because it's a mitzvah, then why don't we go up also by Sukkot?
It's a very good question to which I have not only do not have a good answer, I have no answer at all. And it's good homework for me, but I'm sure there's somebody that maybe has an answer. So please speak up, unmute yourself.
They say a good question is one that doesn't have an answer.
Okay, so then in which case, but in which case, for now at least, it's a fantastic question. But now I'm very curious to see if we could find an answer. Okay, Gimel. So are we good or should we review?
I don't have an answer, but I did learn like the very last night, it's Yachidus, it's just us. So the idea of coming down, it's about focusing in the end just on the Jews versus the rest of the nations. But I mean, I can't answer the whole thing, but I know like at the end why it's very singular is that's the reason. So
Right. Yeah, so that's 100% true, but you could argue, you could push back on that and say, could you imagine how much more that would be amplified if you're going up, and then you go cold turkey to just one to show Hashem's unique relationship with the Jews?
for sure. I was
So-
just saying that the only thing I could say by,
Yeah.
the diminishing is
Yeah.
simply that,
Yeah.
focusing just on us. Like
Yeah.
at a party, everybody shows up at the beginning, but by the end of the night, it's only family who's left. It's not every single person. Like that's just, again, not an answer, just an idea.
Well, Bluma Weinberg is offering an answer in the chat. We go down on Sukkot because it represents nations of the world who go down.
How do we figure out who your Shmuel stands for?
Okay, so to focus
The
back,
animal that you like least.
okay, so let's review Sif Beis and then we'll go to Sif Gimel. The Rebbe is giving two scenarios where there could be a nafkamina in halacha, there could be a difference in halacha based on the two opinions that the Amoraim bring for the difference between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Okay, one scenario is for somebody who lit on the second night of Chanukah only one candle for whatever reason. So now we need to explore how many candles should they light on the third night. So in accordance with the first opinion, that what fuels the whole focus of Hillel and Shammai is to honor and to recognize what day of Hanukkah it's about, then it's clear that this person should light 3 candles because that's what it's about. It's about focusing on what day of Hanukkah is. But if you're going to go according to the second opinion, that it has to do with always doing more, then it would be enough for this person who lit 1 candle on the second night to light 2 candles on the third night. Okay? But the Rebbe says, but this is all in a scenario of b'diavad. Okay? Because lighting 1 candle on the second night as opposed to 2 is as we learned, not the Mahadran. Okay. So the Rebbe says, now let's look at how there would be a difference in halacha where for a person who's trying to do a Mahadran and a Mahadran. But for whatever reason, they didn't have enough materials and they had to light, on the third night, they lit 2 candles. So how much should they light after that? No, they don't have enough to light 3 on the third night. So how much should they light? If we go according to the first Amira, so we're going to say that because they anyway don't have enough to mark what day of Hanukkah it is, so they should just go with the base. They should light 1 because you don't have enough to do what you're supposed to do, which is to mark what day of Hanukkah it is. But if you're going according to the other opinion, which is Beis Hillel is saying you always go up and you never go down, then they shouldn't light one, they should light two. Because even though they're not going to be able to fulfill this completely because they're not lighting three, but at least they're not going down. Because the night before they lit two, they should not light one on the third night. Okay, now we're going into Seif Gimel. But
If I could just ask a question on that, like if they don't have enough to light, so how is it going to continue? Like in that frame of mind, okay, day 3 they can light two, but what's going to happen on day 4? You've already taken away light. I mean, if they won't even have 8 to light all 8 nights, is it okay then on, let's say, day 5 that they light 0, or they're going to go down on a number? It doesn't make sense why. Yeah.
So that's a fantastic question. And it seems that they don't have enough material that they can source that night.
Okay.
But then they'll be able to source additional materials for subsequent nights of Hanukkah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a, thank you. Okay, now the Rebbe says, going deeper into this, we might say, sheyeshna chiluk ben shtei deis elu begeder hashaychos shal mahadrin min mahadrin lemitzvahs ner Hanukkah. The Rebbe says, now, going
Where
deep,
are you?
we're in Seif Gimel, the third part of the Sikha. We now want to analyze what these two opinions teach us about this idea of Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin vis-a-vis the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles. Hachiluk beineim bepashtos hu. Okay, so simply speaking, what's the difference? Laman da Amar Harishon, the first opinion that Tame Bishame Beis Hillel Shayachim Li Mei HaChanukah Keneged Yomim HaNechnasim Keneged Yomim HaYetzim. The first opinion the Rebbe is reminding us is that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are focusing, to put it simply, they're focusing on what night of Hanukkah it is. Okay? Whereas the second Amar is opining that Tamim Elu Shayachim Le'inyan study. But the second opinion is saying, no, it's not. What's driving Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is not their focus on what day of Hanukkah it is. How many days have passed? How many days are coming? No. They are connecting this to other reasons that are study, that are a sidebar, that are tangential. Whether they're connecting it with how the sacrifices were offered on Sukkot, or whether they're connecting it to something that should be inherent to how we serve Hashem, which is that we should always be doing more and not less. The Rebbe says, to say it in different words, besignan acher, in a different style, employing terminology that is used in learning, Zehu din begavra. Are we saying that the different ways in which you light the menorah has to do with the person who's lighting? We're focusing on the gavra, on the person. Al yedeshu meisav v'haylach b'chol laila b'mispar haneres, oy peiches v'haylach kedas beishamai. We're focusing on how this affects the person that's doing the mitzvah. Either they're going up or they're going down, whether you go according to Beis Hillel like we do today, or you go according to Beis Shammai, the way we're told we're going to do in the times of Mashiach. So we're going to say that it's Naisef Hider Bekim HaMitzvah Sheloi Shel Agavra Aval Haneres HaNoisofim Him Begeder Shel Rishus. If you understand this as being connected to Gavra, to the person, we're going to say that by lighting in a style that is Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, you're adding beauty to the person and how they fulfill mitzvahs, but it doesn't really affect the actual mitzvah. The additional candles are optional. It's not part of the mitzvah itself. It's not part of the default mitzvah. So what you're adding is to the gavra, but not to the cheftza, which is the term we're going to introduce in the next paragraph. It's about the person. It's not about what you're doing the mitzvah with.
Why are we, I know there's a reason, I just don't remember why when Mashiach comes will we follow Beis Shammai? Because when you think about it, if anything, there'll be more and more godliness then. So why are we going down? Like, I know there's the of Poyel and Koyach.
That's
right
it.
now.
That's what it is. It has to do with, if I'm remembering correctly, it has to do with the fact that when Mashiach comes, what is in potentia will be revealed. And today, like you said, it's about poil and not kayach. It's about actuality and not potentia. Because we're living in a world that obfuscates potentia, that obfuscates the truth. So that's going according to the first opinion. Then we would say that the way we do mahadrin min mahadrin is an Indian of Gavra. It has to do with the person. But then you have a different way of understanding it. Zehu din b'mitzvah gufa. But if you go according to the different opinion that it's malin b'kodesh. Wait, no, sorry. Hold on. No. But if you go according to the opinion that you're focusing on the days, then haneres nasim chefza de mitzvahs ner Chanukah. Then it becomes part of the entity of the mitzvah, of the candles itself. And in brackets, the Rebbe says, and there's an elongated discussion about this in Encyclopedia Talmudis. The Mefarshim explain the difference in halacha between these two ways of understanding whether it's gavra or chefza. Im huvu lefanav haneres hanesafim la'achar sheberach kfar al ner harishon. What would be a scenario if a person lit one candle? So he was going according to the baseline of how you do this mitzvah. But after he made the bracha, somebody made available to him more materials. Im mevarech al haneres dehidar kiyadua hamachlekes achrayim bazer. So should he make a bracha or not? So if it's a chefza, then there's place to say that he should make another bracha. But if it's gavra, if it's just about the person or what it adds to the person that they're doing more, then you wouldn't make another bracha. V'zeu achiluk ben shtei hadeis b'gemara. And now this amplifies or throws more light on the difference between the two Amoraim and the Gemara. Now, alert. The way this is ordered can be a little confusing because now the Rebbe is going to present the opinions in the opposite order of how they were presented in the Gavra and Chefza. Leman da'am harishain, according to the first opinion, Shataima de Beis Shammai keneged yamim hanechnasin, the Tama de Beis Hillel keneged yamim hayotzin. According to the first Amir that says that what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are focusing on is Tam HaKosher Limei HaChanukah Ulenes Chanukah She'olav Tiknu Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah. They are focusing on a reason that has to do with the days of Chanukah, with the miracle of Chanukah, for which reason the Chachamim gave us this mitzvah of Neres Chanukah. Neres elu shemaisifin b'chol yom heim prat b'Chanukah u'b'mitzvahs ner Chanukah gufa. Then according to this opinion, the candles that are added or the wicks that are added, the lights that are added on every night of Hanukkah, and we're going to go with that for now to make it less complicated. But if we were doing it according to Beis Shammai, the lights that would be decreased, okay? But the fact that you're focusing on what night of Hanukkah it is makes them Heimneres mitzvah shel Hanukkah. They become part of the mitzvah itself, the chefza. V'cheinu b'pashto shal yedei ha'isafa b'neres misparsemes ha'isafa b'neis haneres shahisa b'chol yom. And logic, you know, impels us to say that when you add more candles, you're adding more pirsum, you're adding more, you're publicizing more greatly the ness of Hanukkah. Okay. Masha Ein came, but in contradistinction, Lamanda Amar Hasheni, the second opinion, Shatama de Beis Shammai Keneged Pare Hechag Vitama de Beis Hillel de Malam B'Kodesh Maridin. But according to the second opinion of the Amoraim, that Beis Shammai is aligning this with the bullocks that were brought on Sukkot, and Beis Hillel is fueled by the idea that we should always do more and not less when it comes to matters spiritual. These are reasons that are not connected to Hanukkah. They're not connected to the original miracle of Hanukkah, and they're not connected to how many candles we light. Not that they're not connected to how many candles we light, but it's more global. It's bigger than that. Ninsa shemahadrin min hamahadrin hu rak haisafa v'hidra b'hanhaga shel hagavra b'chlal. This means that by lighting more, we're adding greater dimension to the person's spirituality, but it's not about the mitzvah itself. We want the person to we want the person to always be doing more in holy things. But it's not directly about the mitzvah that they're doing. It's about the spiritual trajectory. It should always be going up.
But then how do you reconcile Shammai's point of view with the lights diminishing? I'm not catching that. I understand we do it by Hillel, but I'm still like with that argument. How is it affecting the goof by reducing the lights? Like how?
Beis Shammai is not focused on that. He's saying that what we do on Hanukkah aligns with what we do on Sukkot.
Right.
So he's not focusing on the Malin B'Kodesh aspect. Beis Hillel is. And that's why he says, Taka, you should light one more.
Yeah, but it also, according to what she just mentioned, it doesn't make sense because Hanukkah is about light and the Purim are about the clippers. You know what I'm saying? It's like the opposite. Like the comparison.
I think you just underscored how it makes sense. Because Beis Hillel is focusing on one thing and Beis Shammai is focusing on a completely different thing.
How is that related to the Parei HaChag?
Beis Shammai is saying we should do on Hanukkah what we do on Sukkot.
That I understand.
Okay, no.
I'm also the same. I'm not understanding if it's about the goof, it's about the body, and that's why we increase in light. And when we do that, it's about ourselves and not about the candles. So how is the opposite affecting us with regards to lighting one less candle? That's my question.
So many times, Rivky, could I just try? Many times, go ahead, Rivky, and if I have something.
No, Rivky, go ahead.
Okay, so there's so many different, and there's so many different things to focus on. You know what I'm saying? Even in medicine and even in science, psychology, and anything we do, there's different things that you're going to focus on. Doesn't make that the other thing is not true, that you're not focusing on, or that it's not important, right? So,
no, I just say can I take a
continue?
Can I give a try to answer? I think it's by virtue of the fact that you're doing a mitzvah that it makes the person holier and more beautiful, the mitzvah. It's not the direction, it's the mitzvah itself that is making the person go higher and making the mitzvah more beautiful. Just the mitzvah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have to add or take away. It would be irrelevant if you adding or taking away if the mitzvah itself is what beautifies.
Yeah, but you remember, by the way, this brings to, I remember being in that, at that for bringing the Rebbe talking to women sicha, and the Rebbe speaking about the famous thing, the difference between the sun and the moon, right? So how do you put on, okay, not tefillin, but let's use tefillin. Okay, every single day you put on tefillin, right? Only on Hanukkah do you light the menorah. So how do you bring the sun element of the same and the moon new? How do you do that for mitzvah tmidiyas, let's say, how do you bring something new? So the person is ma'alim b'kodesh, right? I don't know who's just spoke before and said just the fact that you're doing the mitzvah. I mean, in other words, this sikha could continue, and it's over. We only have, the sikha ends. Maybe it does continue. Maybe the footnotes, but I'm sure there's always ways to connect everything.
There's
Our kids
always ways
complain
to
about
connect
that.
everything, and I think what Rachi said that we're in answer to Eliza or Elsa, remind me, Alyssa?
It's Elza. Yeah.
Elsa. So I think what's bothering you is that we're so used to the fact that we always add, because this is something that's been, it's very prominent, especially in the Rebbe's Torah, that we should always add. But Shammai was focusing on a completely different thing here. And maybe this has to do with the iconic Sikha in Chelek Aleph about how in the Beis Hamikdash they always lit the same amount of candles every single day. Whereas in the Golus, we constantly have to go higher and higher because that's the only way to confront darkness. So let's remember that Beis Shammai is a Geula Dika paradigm, and Beis Hillel is how we're still in the Golus.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Yeah.
Like if we were taking the
Elsa, we
perspective of
can't see your
always
face,
being able to.
Elsa.
Oh,
Elsa,
sorry.
we can't see your face. There you are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dalet. Al pizeh tum takahadgosha v'haricha shel Rashi b'pirushay ala sugya. Okay, now the Rebbe says, now it's going to become more clear, but the literal will be tumtak. It will become sweeter. Okay, what will become sweeter? Why Rashi, in his comments in the Gemara on this back and forth between the Amoraim, why does he seem to elongate his commentary beyond what is necessary? Vizel l'shaynei, and the Rebbe tells us exactly what Rashi says there. Parei hechag, misma'atin v'helchim, that how were the bulls offered on Sukkot? Every day, less and less. And then, okay, that would have been enough. Because, right, he's just telling the person who doesn't remember how the bullocks were offered on Sukkot, just telling them how it was. But then he says, B'karbanos de Parshas Pinchas, as discussed in the Torah in Parshas Pinchas about these karbanos. Why does he have to add that? And then Malin b'kodesh ve'em moiridin. And what does Rashi say on Beis Hillel's opinion? That you always go higher and you don't go lower. Mikra yalpinon. That we learn this notion from a pasuk. Where? The menacha is beperek shtei halachem. It's brought down in the Gemara in the Gemara menachos in the parak about shtei halachem, about the 2 loaves of bread. Now, what does
Sukkot have to do with Chanukah? Like, of all the things in the world, like in all the dinim, Dafke Shammai picks Sukkot as a shita for how to light the menorah.
So
what's the connection?
We have that very often where suddenly you'll be Xera Shava, and I don't know, why is the connection? What's the connection? That's the way things go. I mean, there are a lot of examples where me and you don't really see a connection, but the Amorim and the Tanaim and the Rabban, whatever, they find their connections.
Yeah, but what is it?
Well,
didn't you say at the very
it's in the
beginning, it's
classroom.
about the Yontiv? It says when it refers to the Yontiv, it refers to Sukkot, which is why they use that as the example.
It's called Hachag, yeah. But
like when they refer to Chag, it always referred to Sukkot as the Chag. I don't know. That's what you said at the very beginning.
right, it's true. I don't know.
I'm not prepared properly. I should have, but I'm not prepared properly, Hindi. But I know that there are a lot of sikhs where the Rebbe speaks about the connection, and the Zohar speaks about the connection, even going as far as saying that although usually we say that Hoshaina Rabbah is the last time to appeal to the Eibishter, but there are a number of places where it says that you could still appeal on a gezerah until Hanukkah. So there's a deep, deep connection, but that's okay. Wait, could you remind me what was the first piece of homework? Hindi, remind me.
Oi, which one?
Oh, I could say, she was
Yeah.
at, Hindi was saying what's the connection between Dafka, Sukkot to Hanukkah, and I just want to repeat what Rivky said in the beginning.
No, but what was your first connection earlier?
Yeah, that's the question.
Oh, why we go down in
Why,
if we're trying to
why Dafka Hanukkah? Why Dafka Sukkot? What's the connection? That was her first question.
No, the question
Was
was
it about Klippus and Or?
that Karbanis starts so many and goes smaller. That was the original question.
correct.
Right. And Bluma gave an answer. Okay, good. Bluma gave an answer.
You know, I love to talk, but I also love the way the system was before, and I'm the first one to that talks usually. But I'm just saying, up till this week, what we did was somebody once told me in the beginning, leave your questions to the end, and I was a very good student, and I got to like it. So now I teach the same way as Project Likutei Sichos. I don't let anybody interrupt me till I finish.
But Rivky asked us today to keep asking questions.
But I think after the recording, but maybe, you
Yeah.
know.
Now,
can
we
have-
also have a
combined
second
it.
person that asked the same thing, so it doesn't matter in deference to the Rabbim and also people's time allotment. But
I apologize.
I did. You're right, Vivi. Today I did because I found this confusing, so I didn't want anybody to kind of marinate in their confusion. I wanted to make sure that. But the other way to do it would be for me just to repeat it without questions.
Rochi, I apologize for disturbing the Mahala.
Hindi, por favor, we
Hindi,
say
she
in Spanish,
forgives you.
please.
Machalach. Okay, so now, because we all know this piece of Gemara cold, and we know it with Rashi and Taisvas, so the Rebbe is worried that we were mamish being bothered by the fact that Rashi's perush on this seems to be in more elongated form than it should be, right? I know you all woke up worried about this. The Rebbe says like this: L'chayra, seemingly, ein mechaber kol kach matam harichas bekarbonis the parshas Pinchas lemay nafkaminaha demalim bekodesh kulei lamanu mikra v'asher limud zehu b'menachos beperek shtei halechem. Rebbe says, seemingly, this is all extraneous. This is all redundant, and we know that Rashi is so careful with every word. The Rebbe taught us this over and over and over. So why all these extra words here? The Yesh Leimar, we might say, and we already know that Yesh Leimar is code for I'm going to teach you something new. But the Rebbe always says we might say in very modest form, Shebezois Hidgish Rashi, Shalaman de Amar Zeh, Ein Hataimim Shel Beishama Beis Hillel Shayachem Leprat de Chanukah Lenes Chanukah. That what Rashi's trying to underscore is that in accordance with this Manda Amar, with this opinion, the reasons of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are not shayach to details of Hanukkah, the holiday, and the Nes that gave us the holiday. Because Parei Hechag, Mismat and Vahelchem, Bikarbanes de Parshas Pinchas. Because what is Rashi kind of alluding to? That this idea that every day of Sukkot there were less bulls offered, Rashi tells us is found in the discussion in Parshas Pinchas Bakabanis, ve'ein lezeh shayches l'Chanukah, and malid b'kodesh ve'ein moridin, and the idea that we always do more, we don't do less. Mikra yalpinon. This we learn from a pasuk b'menachos b'perek shei halechem. Zeu aleph limud v'hira b'tar shebechsav u'mitzvos Chanukah kula hi midivrei seifrim. So what is Rashi underscoring? That these limudim come from the Torah shebechtav, and mitzvos Chanukah we know comes from. It's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It comes from Divrei Safrim. It comes from the Chazal. And Beis, Hanilma b'menachos b'perek shtei halechem hayra klolis b'nagel inyanim hanidoinim b'menachos kula l'loy shayches l'Chanukah. And then the idea of that we always do more, we don't do less, This has to do with what is being discussed there about a completely different subject and not Chanukah. In other words, there is no such thing as redundancy or extraneous verbiage in Rashi. Rashi wants to explain the Manda Amar, that is explaining that what is driving Hillel and Shammai is something that is beyond Chanukah. It's more global. Hey, Lufi has move on. So according to this explanation that sheds more light on the original machlekes of the Amoraim, shahanafkamina habeis hanal, that the difference, the second difference in halacha that we spoke about in Seif Beis. So let's go back to Seif Beis for a moment. And you'll remember that the first machlekes, the Rebbe said, was in a situation of b'diavad. But then he wanted to bring down a second way in which this machlekes impacts la halacha. And he said it has to do, it's the last paragraph on the right side of page 208, if you're looking at the Hebrew download from the project. And if you're learning in Yiddish, as some do, it's the 5th paragraph in Seif Beis. And this is a scenario about someone who only has enough to light 2 candles on the 3rd night, and what should he do? So according to the first opinion, which is that we're focusing on how many days of Hanukkah came or how many days of Hanukkah are left, then he would only light 1. Because he anyway can't go according to that. But if you're going according to the second opinion, that it has to do with always doing more, then even if he can't fulfill the always doing more completely, because he's only lighting the same amount as he lit the day before, but at least he's not doing less. And so he would light the 2 that he can light. Rebbe says now, he says, in accordance to what we've just explained, then what to do in that scenario? What this person should do, who only has enough materials to light 2 lights on Hanukkah and not 3, if he should light 1, he should light 2, it's not so clear. It still remains ambiguous as to what this person should do. Because Gam Manda Amar Tama de Beis Hillel Keneged Yomim Hayetzin, because even according to the one who says that Beis Hillel is focused on what day of Hanukkah it is, Yesh loy lahadlik belel gimel shnei neres, bim ein loy dai shemel shleisha, then he should still light 2, and even if he doesn't have enough to light 3, why? Because although he will be lacking in the completion of the most careful way to do it that would be necessary on the 3rd night, yesh loy lahadlik al kol panim keneged chelek miyamim hayetzin. He should at least do what he can. He'll fulfill in part this focus on how many days of Hanukkah it is. Because now that we went through, the Rebbe explained us that a different way of understanding this could be to focus on the Cheftza or the Gafra. So if we understand this, and we're looking at the Cheftza, then at least he'll be able to add to the Cheftza. He'll light 2. Okay, it won't be 3, which would be the most complete way to do it, but he'll be adding a dimension to the mitzvah of the candles itself. Neres haChanukah sheyadlik yiyu b'shleimus yoser v'yifarsamu. His candles that he'll be lighting are going to be more complete, and he's going to publicize loyrak as ikar nes haneres elagam es ha'haisafa b'nes lagabe yom harishain. He's going to be publicizing not only the main Ness of Hanukkah, but how the Ness of Hanukkah was incrementally greater and greater with every passing day. Ella, sheyesh limtzoi nafka mina b'mi she'en lo dai shemen l'kayim afilu ahidra shel halayla koidem. L'dugma mi sheyesh li b'leil ches poches mishiva neres. But the Rebbe says, well, let's throw in another scenario. We can also find a difference in halacha based on chefza and gavra that's going to go a different way in the following scenario. Somebody who on the 8th night of Chanukah has less than enough materials to light 7 candles. So it's going to be a nafkamina ba'ofen hafuch. It's going to be, the difference is going to be in the opposite direction. Leman da'amar harishain, according to the first opinion, Kneged Yamim HaYotzin, which is focusing on how many days of Chanukah it is, Kevan Shezehu Chelek Miguf HaMitzvah D'Neres Chanukah, because we have now determined that we can understand it now as Chefza, that it's part of the actual mitzvah. Olav lahadlik kol ma sheyesh biyadei. He should light everything that he can. If he could light 5, he should light 5. If he could light 6, he should light 6. If he could light 7, he should light 7. Kidei lahisiv b'midas ha'efshar b'mitzvahs ner Chanukah. Because if you're opining that it's chefza, do as much as you can towards the mitzvah. But if you're going to say this has to do with the second way of understanding it, that Tama de Beis Hillel de Malim B'Kodesh Ve'Ein Moridin, it's something more global. It's not the chefza, it's the gavra. We're focusing on how a person should comport themselves, that generally speaking, they should always be doing more. Which would mean that there is really no connection between the additional mitzvah, between the additional candles and the mitzvah itself. It's about the person, but not the mitzvah. Mistaber, then it's logical to conclude she'olav lahadlik rak ner ishu beisai ki ikar hamitzvah. Then logic impels us to say that you should go back to the baseline mitzvah, light 1, because you don't have enough to do the mahadrim min mahadrim correctly. You're not going according to the opinion that this is about the chefza. You're going according to the opinion that this is about the gavra. You want to be a better person. You want to do more. You always want to be adding. But there's a very important lesson here. And that is that sometimes less is more. Sometimes in our quest to do more, we might, God forbid, chisel away at the original baseline mitzvah. Shechenim Yosef al Ikar mitzvah, because here it's going to come out that if he's going to add on the main baseline of the mitzvah, nimtzer sheyavar bazeh al ve'ein moridin, then he's going to contravene this idea that we don't do less in holy things. We always only add more. Masha enkin in b'yom zeh yekayim es ikar mitzvah tikkuna ner ishu beisai. But if he's going to, this day, he's going to keep the mitzvah and the baseline way, then he's going to be doing the mitzvah correctly, and he's going to be doing it in the baseline way, which is 1 candle for each household on every night of Hanukkah. Now, this needs to be learned a few times. And I do acknowledge my lack of background in Talmudic study. It certainly came through, but I hope that it was a beginning of learning the Sikha, and then we'll continue to learn it. Okay, so I see people are saying that people have to leave at a certain hour, so we are gonna keep to our original way we would do it. We would do the questions later, and it is true that I invited the questions today, vociferously so, and I thought that we could do it because it's a short sikha, but still, some people do have only 10 to 11. Yeah, so now Tzippa will press the magic button and